Escape to the Metaverse. Better act like you know. Yeah. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the Metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the Metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah. Escape to the Metaverse. Better act like you know. You are now tuned into the Matthew Rizzle show. Yeah.
No one tell them I've begun recording.
So, real quick, before we get into it, what's top of mind? We're like unpacking how we normally do our podcast, which is literally just jump on a call and be like, yo, you got any alpha? You got any tea?
Yeah, all these people are like listening to our back end process. Let's see. I don't know. What are we going to talk about? This is like my final day of like LARPing as an artist in this thing that we talked about last week. Dude, I'm fucking annoyed at our like handle that we changed, that we needed to change.
Let's talk about that bullshit because that's super annoying.
Fucking
because it works, but it doesn't work. It's like Twitter is rugging us. If you click it, it takes you and says that there's no podcast, and you refresh, and then it works. Same URL.
Really annoying.
I don't know if it's an Anchor thing or what. I submitted a ticket to Anchor just
so
they
can help with this. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So we can talk about that.
With a whip, man. We could talk about the whole situation with like Jin and Boomboxhead. That was like really dope and would be fun to recap. And then got Skrilla coming up and everything. So
exactly.
And
I really wanted to talk about that too.
Yeah, all that stuff is like very top of mind anyway. Interop and how these pieces fit together. So cool. Do we have to? I feel weird. Like we need like Robot Lady to like give us permission to start. Like, how do we even kick this thing off?
You lazy mofo.
Yeah, 1 sec. Let me trigger the. Oh, yeah. Jesus, we're already recording.
I am exposing your secrets.
Oh shit!
Oh yeah,
that whole intro's been recorded.
Tristan's like lurking backstage, recording us the whole time. We need
That's
Robot
cool.
Lady to be like recording, starting, or whatever the hell she says.
Right, that'll be your action symbol.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Dragonate's a consummate professional. He's gonna discover where we actually start.
Am I and will I? Are you sure?
And I'm confident also he's going to insert a Robot Lady, just for nostalgia's sake. Even though the robot has only ever been something that you and I have heard. Rizzle. It's not for anyone else. Anyway.
One of the most constantly referred to people on our podcast, Robot Lady. No one's ever heard her but us.
Exactly. Anyway, dude, welcome back. Another week, another episode, Matthew and Rizzle show. First of all, let's talk about like the bumpy departure of the new URL that we tried to set up to do like good quote unquote like marketing and shit for our podcast. Ended up coming back to bite us. We changed the URL from like some weird URL I'd set up when I created the podcast like years and years ago on Anchor. It was like Moffer hyphen something. It was just like no one understood what it meant. So we changed it to like Matt hyphen and hyphen Rizzle just to make it more human readable and identifiable. And it ended up breaking up all the links, even though we updated Twitter, like clicking on the link, it takes us to like a broken Anchor site. You have to like mash refresh. There's like a walk around to make it work again, but kind of a nightmare.
Dude, so how like ironic, right? We're like on the podcast where we're talking about like trying to streamline our marketing and like get our shit together. We like actually try to make some moves in a productive direction, and like it completely blows up in our face. Dude, there's like it was a good episode too. It's like it's so frustrating. Like, and probably one of the reasons why we like aren't that great at this either. But like, dude, staying on top of like all this shit, especially when you have like a whole bunch of stuff going on, is like it's just like so much. And yeah, man, you think you're doing something smart, and here we are then getting flooded with like DMs being like dead link, like you can't access podcasts, like fuck.
Yeah, but that being said, like the place for this one, it got up to like around 150, which is like at the lower end. of what we get like on an act like in less than a week, but it's like people were figuring out ways to listen to it, so that's reassuring. At least I think our listeners are also used to us like giving them a bunch of challenges and not making things super easy for them. So had to
Shout out a couple hundred diehards, mash and refresh on the podcast page.
it's kind of dope to see on the one hand, but like super annoying. Hopefully it's just gonna smooth out with time. I know, like, thinking back to when I actually set up the podcast feed, as soon as you do it on Anchor, at least back in the day, maybe it's different now, you would like be searchable in most of the podcasts like apps, but it would take like a period of time, like maybe a month before like Spotify and like Cast and other like podcasts apps like supported it and like made it queryable. So I'm guessing something of a similar kind of lag period exists when you update the URL. So
That's
anyway.
my assumption as well. It was cool to see like Trust Wallet randomly, the episode we did with Trust Wallet like 3 years ago or something about NFTs randomly get tweeted out by somebody. And they were in their infancy when we interviewed them. I mean, enough that, you know, the CEO or whatever hopped on our podcast, and it was a great interview too. It was cool to see that like randomly be put out there.
Yeah, it was wild. I clicked on their follower account now. It's like Trust Wallet has 2.2 million followers. Having that tweeted out is pretty dope. Again, it sucks that the link that is on that tweet is now broken. But like,
all right, the diehards know there's always a series of logistical hurdles to jump through when dealing with any of our shit.
yeah.
Actually, go ahead.
The contents of that episode were forecasting basically the rise of Matic and Polygon and these layer twos, like Optimism and shit like that, and all the building that's happening over in their necks of the woods. That was so early. People were like, "What the fuck are you talking about? L1's forever, RIP, anything else?" And it's like, actually, no. Like, there's a ton of building that's happening over on the L2s and a lot of energy over there. Like the Starbucks, like the whole enterprise, like the enterprise blockchain meme has essentially just morphed into like L2s and shit like that.
The guy we interviewed, I'm dropping his name. I want to say it started with a V. If I can't recall, but he also was great. Say it again?
Vladdy?
Yeah. Had like some great stories, like was awesome to interview and had some like really interesting like tales from growing up and everything. That was a cool one, man.
Yeah, like farming tomatoes before getting into
yeah, really weird, really cool.
Oh, sorry, Victor Radchenko.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Sorry,
No, all good, man.
The world Vladdy is also coming.
Like, you know, at this point, it's kind of it's funny to be like, people ask like, have you interviewed so and so? And I'm like, I think so. Like, we've done so many of these at this point, and like sometimes it blurs together. It's like, were they on the Whip? Were they on our podcast? You know, I had the run of the Token Smart podcast for a little while there, and it all sort of like mushes together a little bit. The Whip last week was a banger though, man. Having like Jin and Boomboxhead and sort of like that free flowing discussion going on. I feel like even, you know, Johan was like all excited about it too. And I feel like Johan keeps it like pretty even keeled. So when I hear like Johan's voice get excited, I know we like did something really right.
Yeah, I mean, Johan is as even keel as they get. And like after the Whip and then today on like the pre-Whip, post-Whip kind of like breakdown that we do every Tuesday, he was excited. Yeah, and really, whoa. This is like, first of all, I was like, calm down, Johan. This is like weird for me. But like he's always focused on that cutting edge, that bleeding edge conversation of like where we're actually at, especially when it comes to like open metaverse building and everything. And especially Jin keeping it so real last week and just talking about, hey, it's kind of fucked up. There's no real communication between any of the bigger projects. Even though there's like a lot of action at the edges or in some of like the newer, less well-known projects, incorporating some of the open building standards and stuff like that. There's not the proper give and take between the bigger projects to really truly help push forward this open metaverse and open standards and the interoperable nature of what that possibility or what possibility those open standards help create, right? And I thought that was refreshing. I hadn't heard like a proper update on like where the fuck we're at since really last year and before the prices for a lot of these metaverse coins started to crash, right? And there's just like peak euphoria and everyone just like, Adidas is in the metaverse now, like send it to $1,000, like up only. So having that reality check was interesting. We were talking that we probably want to do some sort of like proper state of the metaverse update, maybe on a quarterly basis, like of course bringing Godfrey and Jin back, but getting some of the other parties and stakeholders involved so that we can have like a real proper conversation if back channels aren't currently working, trying to jumpstart that ebb and flow, that back and forth, the conversation between all the parties. I think it's super, super crucial.
Yeah, man, it was I mean, we've done things with both of them over the years, but this was the first one in a while, and I feel like the sort of room emptied after this like bull run within the context of the metaverse, like specifically now, man. It actually happened twice last week where I was at a random metaverse event and ran into someone who I was also doing a metaverse event with like later on in the week. And that happened on two separate occasions last week. And I'm like, dude, it's like crazy how small the metaverse is aside from being like limitless or whatever, where like there's really, when it all boils down, like the bull run ends, everyone has sort of left the room. There's still like just a handful of us out here who are like really, really passionate. And I feel like, dude, if I was Jin and Boomboxhead, man, I would feel like sort of burned by like this past bull run, because I feel like there was this huge promise of like the metaverse becoming a thing, and like, they both of them have like the skill sets like on the bleeding edge of everything, and would seem like this was the time where all of their contributions would essentially be like, most in the spotlight or appreciated. And somehow at like the end of the day, it seems like, Jin was always out here, like sort of on his own island, like, building open source and like, pushing this space forward, along with Boomboxhead and a handful of other people. And then like all his other people piled in, and then like now that everyone left the room, it's just us again, and like Jin and Boomboxhead, who like sort of have these ideals in mind. But it was cool to hear from both of them speak so passionately about like the open metaverse and their desire for these projects to work together and sort of build out the thing that the user base, the primary user base of these metaverse platforms really want. And it's just crazy to think like, everyone's sort of building in their silos, like some much more so than others. And you can understand why, people need to have some sort of silos in order to like, be able to stay afloat and make some money or something like that. But it's awesome to hear. Let me walk back just a second, because I'm like, all this stuff happened, and like Jin and Boomboxhead really are the experts in this, like bar none. Like you can bring in like all these outside people and to this space right now, but their skill sets are just so far ahead of everybody else that for all this like crazy hypeness and all this shit to happen, and for at the end of the day, like Jin and Boomboxhead to just be back sort of doing their thing, like, building out their street, trying to like stitch all these pieces together in like this sort of indie, like haphazard type of way with the resources they've bootstrapped or whatever. It's, I don't know, the whole rise and fall and seeing who's left when the dust is settled and sort of getting a finger on the pulse is just all been very fascinating.
Yeah, no. Part of me though, like listening to the conversations, like, hold up, like I understand everything this man is saying today.
Yeah.
Jin's been someone, like to your point, who I've always, since Andrew Steinwald mentioned this dude's name back in the day, always associated Jin at the bleeding edge, like literally him bleeding out and creating the edge. Like that's how far out in space that guy is. He's just like super next level. But listening to him, like I understand everything you're saying. It's kind of cool. It's like maybe that's because we've been doing this for so long. We finally like totally get and understand and speak Jinese or something like that.
Yeah.
But part of me is like, hold up, like maybe that's not good too. Maybe like we just like everything stopped and progress has stopped being made because of the core issues he's been talking about. That's sort of made me more worried about this because honestly, if we look around, there's not like with the exception, for example, of like Mona going into a cool direction, and having like again keeping the flame alive of the artists and the creators who create compelling shit for folks. With the exception of that and a few other projects that are doing sort of interesting things, I don't know, the window of opportunity, is it closing? Is it getting smaller? Is it smaller than it has been? Will it get bigger again? There's a whole bunch of like concerns and worries I have to keep the energy alive and to keep people coming into these virtual spaces and having fun and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure like what the future holds for anything, but honestly, really, really need to heed the warning of Jin and try to get some energy back into the space and like more people talking together.
Yeah, I feel like all that's left are really like the super fans. We had like sort of the influx of like people who are curious about the metaverse and people who are interested in like attending virtual events. And I think that will always be there to some extent. But really like there's not a whole lot of like truly innovative shit going on like that would rally people back if they've, you know, sort of been there, done that, seen what's out there like a few times. And if you're really not a nerd and like completely fascinated by like all of this, there's just not a lot of like really interesting, compelling stuff going on out there that hasn't been replicated or done a few times in like some, you know, capacity or whatever. So you know, I feel like we're definitely back in sort of this situation catering to the super fans. Dude, I really feel like AI has like the potential to ignite the space again. And I saw some tweet that I won't be able to conjure up off the top of my head of like essentially like, you know, prompting, you know, virtual landscapes and virtual worlds and everything. And I'm like, this is going to be some wild shit, man, when like the tech is out there and refined enough where you can just sort of go into one of these metaverse platforms and play God mode and just be like, make a forest and like a giant castle with dragons for me to explore. And, you know, I feel like that's probably like not as far off as it sounds like it is, like conceptually. I'm like, man, that would be some wild shit. But I think that when it happens is going to unlock like a whole new set of users who are interested in playing around with the metaverse in like completely different ways. Because for right now, it just seems like everything is like a slight, again, like a slight variation of everything else out there. And there's certainly cool stuff if you like love the space. But in terms of like attracting outside appeal, like it almost feels like we ran the gamut of like, you know, VC investors thinking that this version of the metaverse is like the next thing and willing to just like continuously dump money into what we've all like seen, you know, happen before.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I think there's parallels like in the metaverse side of things as well as like the non-metaverse, like even the art side, right? Just a sort of like explosion of people doing basically the same thing with slight variations to like some sort of success for some folks, but overall like not a lot of people really like it not being like the ultimate final way of doing things, right? I think there's parallels with like the metaverse boom, at least the beginning of last year, and like again like the manifold OEs that I don't know sort of already feel dead now and like totally played out after maybe like a week and a half of total exuberance. People I think are really trying to find something more substantive, something more filling and nourishing. So
The
that's
ordinal
sort of
thing, man. I feel like the ordinals, and maybe I just don't know what I don't know, and that's totally possible. But I'm like, the ordinals seem like such a hype-driven, like bear market like, you know, I feel like we're in one of these situations where there's not a lot of people left, and so like every 3 or 4 days we get like one new hype cycle thing, and everyone rushes to that, and then like, you know, that's gone after like a few days, and then there's like one other thing, and I'm like, the ordinals are on like what, their 5th or 6th or 7th day. I'm not sure what they're at, but I'm like, I don't find it like very interesting or compelling or like, and maybe I don't understand why. I know we got Rare Skrilla coming on the whip this week, and I'm actually very, very interested to hear his take on it because I respect him very much, and you know, clearly he was involved with like Rare Pepe's, you know, on Bitcoin like way, way back in the day. So I am interested in trying to keep an open mind, but I'm like, at least on like the surface level, I'm like, this isn't like interesting to me. At least I don't know why it should be.
Well, anytime you see that sort of like FOMO pump, right, and just absolute euphoria, unless you had gotten in like in the first like 1,000 mints of ordinals, it's just like, all right, let the hype cycle do its thing. No way I'm burning money like trying to get in at this point. Clock it, see if there's any artists really doing things. Again, like an artist I really, really respect, Rip Cash, is in there minted some ordinals with his like JPEG like cyberpunk art. It's really cool with the CCTV cameras. Like, makes sense for him. Seeing if any other artists make use of it. But yeah,
cool. I'm not trying to say that's not like, you know, I'm opposed to artists like, you know, tinkering around as someone who likes that himself. But
I'm saying that it's a good sign that there actually are artists tinkering around, monitoring how that plays out. But doing anything in the middle of the hype cycle just seems like a recipe to lose money and have your expectations totally burned. But I mean, the value of being able to mint to the Bitcoin blockchain seems amazing to me. The most attractive part potentially would be something that you're not even collecting. It's just like treating the Bitcoin blockchain as the ledger of record. So like artists, for example, like always going back to like an artist example, at the end of every year, like publishing to Bitcoin as an ordinal, whatever, your complete list of works that you released that year. What artist address or addresses did you use to release? Maybe given like a snapshot of your collectors that have held for the entire year or something like that. So that record is made permanent on the most permanent blockchain around, right? Use cases like that emerging out of this current boom are sort of like what I'm most excited about.
Yeah. No, that does. That's a good argument, and it does make it compelling. I guess in some respects. Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm like an old curmudgeon. I'm like, I just don't feel like learning like this whole new thing and like all this shit or whatever. But people should like tinker around with shit, man. And as soon as you actually said that, I was like, you know what? I should fucking tinker around too. Like, why the hell not? Like, all this stuff is like honestly really fascinating and interesting. And I don't know. I saw some post about like how janky the process is, or was at least in the first place, to like mint an ordinal or whatever you got to do, and how that was sort of the allure of, you know, purchasing one or getting involved in it or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I get that argument as well. Like sometimes it's like almost cool because it's such a bitch or like a process or like so different than anything else going on. I don't know, like I said, man, like really interested in hearing like Rare Skrilla's take. I know he's like a big proponent of minting on Bitcoin and everything in general. So I don't know, dude. I mean, the other thing that I think left like, I don't know, a bad taste in my mouth, and it's not like right of me to hold this against like ordinals in general, but like I feel like as soon as you know, this concept started catching attention, we had like the punk derivative on ordinals like selling for like a shitload of money, and I was just like, oh, like barf, like, you know, nothing against punks, but I'm like, dude, why is this like the only thing that we've got is like, you know, a new thing comes out and the first thing that happens is some fucker slaps like a, you know, the exact same punk derivative on that chain or on like that whatever. And I sort of get it, they're like iconic, you know, in their own right or whatever, but it's just, to me, that's what made it seem like I don't know. I'm like, this is the best we can do. It's encouraging to like hear that there are artists and like, you know, potentially people doing like actually interesting shit on there. And there probably is a lot more interesting shit on there that I'm aware of, but that's what caught the headlines. And I'm just like,
honestly, that's crypto cringe to me. Like seeing that behavior, it's like, ugh, are you guys still doing that? It's very corny. Having folks like take their like someone with the Bored Ape, always with the Bored Ape, fucking stupidest community around, taking their Bored Ape and like burning it and reminting on ordinals and like, hey, I got my ordinal ape, and it's like, all right, okay, like this is peak stupidity at this point. Top signal, let shit start to cool down. It's my take basically. I know there's like some good apes out there, but honestly, on the whole, just not the most erudite, like top of the chain community overall.
it's pretty crazy to see like the CNN. I don't know if you caught that, but a few people posted the CNN clip about the coverage of the whole like Bored Ape Yacht Club like controversy over like I don't know, there's like a whole lot of controversy, but it was interesting to see it on CNN, see the clip on CNN, have them acknowledge that Bored Apes has sort of become the, you know, sort of de facto, like what everybody associates NFTs with, and also how like not everyone's real thrilled about that. So I don't know, it was actually like pretty interesting. I feel like the predominant I don't know if coverage is the right word, but I feel like most of what I see out there is like just, you know, a Bored Ape love fest about how they're like the greatest thing to ever happen, like constantly. So to see like a major like news publication come out and sort of like I don't know, try to discuss the whole thing from all sides or whatever. I don't know. It's interesting. That situation, it seems like it's been played out like forever. I have no idea where that like whole lawsuit or anything is, but I feel like that started happening during like the peak of the bull run, and it's still like sort of ongoing or something. I don't even know.
The CNN clip I saw was like mostly delving into the Ryder Rips like 0x poly conspiracy theory. Ryder Rips is just a fucking grifter too. Like I have no time for him or Pauly and like the Funks crew and all that bullshit. Honestly, it's just like super negative. And again, conspiracy theories, like making huge reaches and shit like that. I have no time for those folks either way. But yeah, I mean, it is sort of interesting that CNN covers it, but then again, like,
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
being on the receiving end of how a lot of journos actually work and how just unethical they can be, like they're grifters too. They're just going for fucking clicks and engagement, and it's not the best thing. Although to like a boomer lens, it's like interesting, I guess, that it's being covered, and maybe that is by itself just a good thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting that it's being covered, and I only sort of like get bits and pieces of this from the sidelines because you know, as the NFT scene has expanded, I feel like the NFT scene when Bored Apes sort of were on their uprising was still small enough that like that was the dominant conversation like across the board, and now at this point, I feel like there's so much going on in so many places that I'm so out of the loop on what some people consider to be like the major things. And to be fair, man, I didn't actually like watch the entire clip. I only like jumped through a couple parts, but it caught the beginning, and I might be paraphrasing incorrectly, but at least what the way I interpreted it was that I appreciated was that not everybody appreciates them being like sort of the face of NFTs to the public. And so I don't follow too much of Pauly or what Ryder Rips is going on or where they're at in all of this shit. But I do hate being associated to the general public or like people I just meet. Like, you know, my kid's got a thing. I got to like socialize with some parent, you know, end up talking. You know, you're into NFTs, something Bored Apes. I'm like, fuck, dude. Like the whether you want to be associated with them or not, to the casual observer, we're sort of fucked. feels
Yeah,
like.
I always like to take those conversations with like, yo, one of my boys burned an ape or burned a punk, like always citing Robness's like on-chain performance art with his burnings of these digital artifacts. That's where I got. And people are like, hold up, what? He burnt it. How much was it worth? I was like, yeah, it's right there. You can go check out the burn transaction and the tweets and all that stuff. Super still like under the radar, underreported, underappreciated, but as I mean, for Robness's sake, I sort of hope that the notoriety of those projects continues, just because that's such like a baller, badass move, and like to own that shit and to make a performance out of it. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
It seemed like he got a lot of accolades for the punk, but somehow when he burned the ape, that like didn't catch the wave or sort of flew under the radar or something like slightly more than that. I don't know, man. Maybe he should have turned it into an ordinal and like that was his mint that shit on Bitcoin next time.
And then an ordinal, it's like, yeah, resurrection, bitches. Now it's all good. I was getting ready for BTC minting.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's I don't know. The whole thing is fascinating, man. But it's also like it's always interesting to sort of see from the eyes of the mainstream, like where we're at or how we're being presented. And for the longest time, and then again, not to like beat this into the ground or whatever, but I feel like. And this was like part of this part that I skipped through. It was like, it was actually talking about like the celebrity and the moon pay and all that shit, which is the part that I like appreciated, because for a while there, it was like every fucker out there with any mainstream attention, like Seth Meyers or whatever, is like, oh, it got my ape, and like Paris Hilton and all these people, and sort of like dismantling what appeared to be like a very fake media campaign finally being dismantled and presented for what a lot of us suspected it to be. I don't know if that's confirmed or not, but sure looks sus.
Yeah, I mean, but that too is kind of funny. It's like, well, we get celebrities to endorse and promote everything else, and that helps those projects. Like, what's really the issue here? Bringing those folks in. I don't know if it's an issue of like misrepresenting how they acquired their ape, but again, like how many celebrities are paid to endorse luxury brands that they may not even own? Like, I don't know. People are getting their panties up in a bunch for any reason to call folks out and to get into like a tiff or something like that. So those critiques don't really move me. I see just like the net benefit of what they did, like socializing the terminology that we use, for better or worse. Again, there's like a big backlash when the shit starts to dip, and like the mockery has probably been intensified just because the number of people that now know what's going on, but the number of new people that came in as a result of that socializing, I think, is still like a net benefit, and people being familiar, so that when the next wave of whatever, which appeals to a broader audience that people get quote unquote more easily, then that will be looked upon and as more of a positive versus like the negative.
I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, man. And I do agree about like sort of them sort of just spreading awareness in general being something that benefits us in the long run. But dude, I feel like this is different than like, celebrities getting paid to like endorse some shoes or whatever, right? You take some athletes or whatever, and they get like a whole bunch of shoes, and then they get paid to like endorse the shoes. I'm like, dude, this is like you've been given shares of a company or something, but you just pretend like you found it by yourself, and then like pretend like you invested in it like all by yourself, all with the like intention of making that investment go up. And it's like, dude, I feel like that's like the difference in like, someone getting like paid to promo something versus someone like, sort of pretending like that's not what's happening, and they just like stumbled upon this great thing like independently or whatever. But
not like shares though.
What's that?
It's not like shares, right? It's not fungible shares. It's non-fungible apes that they got.
Yeah, but it's like an asset. It's like it's you've been given a house and but you got to pretend like you found it all by yourself and like came up with the money all by yourself and you're just like, "Oh, I just got this awesome house in this awesome neighborhood and I totally just, found it next to Paris and next to Seth Green or whatever and like all these other people just happen to find these great houses in this great neighborhood too." I don't know, man. It seems fishy to me.
Real estate works too. It's like you move into a new place, you try to like make sure your lawn and shit looks good, and then you have like homeowners associations that are all like cracking the whip on other folks to make sure that they keep their shit up so that everyone's like value, quote unquote, like in theory at least, could go up. And like the more like you get a famous person to move in or some shit like that, ooh, like that's great for real estate prices. That's great for everyone, right? It's the same thing.
Yes. I was going to say, I think my analogy sucks, but maybe this isn't so bad because I'm like, so to take it one step further, I'm like, okay, it is the same thing, but I feel like it's different. I feel like if that town or, ordinance or whatever, like puts up the money to essentially pay a celebrity to move there in order to increase their property value, I'm like, that's cool. That's fine and like legal or whatever, but I also feel like it's bullshit for the celebrity in that example to pretend that didn't happen, that they're just like, oh, I just happened to find this awesome thing. It's like, no, fucker, like you got paid, let's keep it real. So even if like all intentions are good, even if the celebrity like likes living there, I don't know, maybe this like example isn't like the greatest or whatever, but I'm like, you're getting paid to promote something, you should just be straight up and be like, I'm getting paid to promote this thing. Even if you really like this thing, like you should just say like, be forthright and not just be like, oh, I just happened to, me and all my buddies found this thing coincidentally.
No, I agree with the misrepresentation part. Like if there were, like, I don't recall celebrities like being as blatant or like disingenuous to say like, oh, look what I just like happened to find in my digital wallet that I had already set up. If anyone was doing it like that, I think that is problematic. I don't recall that. I feel like that's the insinuation, but anyway.
Yeah, maybe, man. Maybe I'm sort of like extrapolating a little bit. I don't know, man. It's it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But also like just sort of agree with your point on Robness. Also agree with your point on like these projects being good in terms of just public education and making people aware of where we're at. But also, I just feel like I don't know, man. Like the game that they made is just like so unexciting. I'm like, I don't know. I could go on and on. I'm just tired of like them being the thing we're like most closely associated with when like the whole shit started with a bunch of other stuff and sort of just got co-opted with like this gigantic ape narrative.
Mm-hmm. No, totally. Again, I this is like the refrain I keep going back to over the past few weeks, that whatever the shit is, right, and like whatever side of the line you fall on any of these issues, like you can't say that this shit is not entertaining. Like this is the equivalent of us like sitting up down to like breakfast table, like piping up coffee in hand, cracking open that newspaper, and it's like the fucking apes and Riot Rips are at it again. Like, this is fun.
Yeah,
like read about and think about.
Dude, it's man. I feel like we really I think I told you, man. I was in Disney a few weeks ago with my kids and my wife and everything, and we're on the future ride at Epcot or whatever, when they're like talking about the future, and like the future ride was, I don't know when they updated it, but they got all the way to like VR at the very end. They're talking about like technology's progression throughout the course of history. It's actually like really cool and interesting. I hadn't been there in like 20 years or something like that, so fresh take at a different point in my life. And I'm like, dude, all the shit that we're talking about leads to like what we're doing right now, man. Like we're like literally on the bleeding edge of some of like the coolest tech out there. And of course there are like different sectors of like technology that are also like, fascinating in their own right. But I'm like, dude, we're like right there on the bleeding edge. And like, the next addition to this, what does the future look like? ride at the theme park or whatever could absolutely have like all the shit that we're like fucking with right now, you know, like crypto and NFTs and AI and the metaverse and the intersection of like all these things. It's just really to your point, man, just exciting, win, lose or draw or whatever the hell is going on out there. It's fun to just be in the mix of this whole thing, and it's fun to speak Jin, man. To what you were saying like earlier, I feel like we've been in this space for a long time. I've known Jin for a long time, but I feel like when I met Jin, I didn't quite like understand him or get where he's coming from and be able to carry on a conversation with him like I am now. So it's cool to be that deep.
100%. And like to your point, like this with every passing day, with more people coming in, like as corny or derivative as most of the projects are, like in the most negative, with the most negative lens on, like the adoption's still coming. And even looking at the Super Bowl, I'm not talking about the fucking grifter who did the QR code, like give me Twitter followers, paid $7 million for that. I'm not talking about that, but even looking at like the talking E-Trade baby commercial, there's like casually thrown in like Metaverse, like even though they're like sarcastic and snarky about it, it's just like, it's really funny to hear people really talk about like, virtual real estate, living in the Metaverse, that sort of thing. It's like, it's really kind of funny, as like sarcastic as it may be, which lends, it kind of reinforces my belief that this is where we're going. Yeah, everyone made a joke about the internet back in the day and like, oh, you have like a www dot blah, 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 blah. Are you surfing the internet, bro? Like, people were making fun of people that were on the internet casually browsing and like vibing out back in the day, before they went on to make like the most impactful corporations of our generation and like probably the past few generations, with the behemoths that have been running the show on the tech side of things for the past couple of decades, right? So yeah, I'm laughing all the way to the bank and into the future, basically.
Dude, it is crazy to have entered like the public vernacular. That was sort of like a moment for me as well during the Super Bowl. I was like, wow, man, look how fucking far we've come. Like from, that NFT NYC we were at with like, 100 people or something like that, when like nobody knew what any of this shit was. And to be in the public vernacular, even as a joke, man, like during the fucking Super Bowl, to have like our like little terms from a few years ago be that big now, that people actually are saying them and knowing what is being referenced is like pretty fucking staggering, man. We were there like so early, dude. I've been on like a bunch of been at a bunch of different virtual events and like different Twitter spaces and everything over the last couple of weeks, and it's happened like a bunch of times where like people who I respect and who are like extremely talented are like flexing that they're like been here since 2021 and shit like that, and I'm like, it's so crazy to like take a step back and be like, those people, at this point have probably earned their stripes and like should be proud of being in the space for that long, if they're still in here, like contributing and building and everything. But I'm like, damn, dude, like it's so early, like not that long ago. And like, 5 years later, people are still out here saying we're so early. And there's probably a lot of truth to that, but it's just crazy.
Yeah. And appreciating like the different classes that have come into crypto, the different generations. Like when you zoom out and you see everyone else that has their quote unquote like early stripes from whatever their classes, like folks that got into in 2015 or 2012 or like earlier, and later, like everyone, it's very cool to have that schedule and have that cadence and have people kind of come up together with their cohort so that they have their tribe, but then like it's just the ring of tribes that preceded them and surround them and are still working amongst them, or within them. If we think that this is like a growing tree, right? Like the OGs are the smallest of small rings, and everyone that comes after them, like they're bigger, they encircle them, they surround them. Thinking in that perspective, then it sort of like shifts how you think about everything, but it's still cool nonetheless, I think. And to appreciate that is really to appreciate like how history grows and evolves and is always in flux and is changing. And again, that just reinforces how like built for the future this space and everyone that's participating and staying active is. And even people that quote unquote aren't active, as long as they keep coming back at whatever cadence works for them and their lives, like that's everything. Like sort of a tangent, but that revolving door of being able to come in and add value and create and have fun and vibe out, and then kind of peace out if other things come up in one's life, only to come back later. That's a huge like benefit of this space that you don't get in like a certainly a normal like 9 to 5 job that expects you to come into a very specific office and sit in a very specific cubicle, right? I think again the impact of this sort of dynamics and opportunities that the space poses to people having fun, working professionally, otherwise shilling, shit posting. It's still so early in that regards that people really haven't thought through like those extra benefits and what it potentially means for their lives. It's sort of a tangent, but
No, it's thinking about what you're saying about it being tribal, man, and I think there's actually like a lot of truth to that, and that probably facilitates this like environment that you're referring to, where like you can dip out for a little while and then like come back in, and if you're part of one of these tribes out here, then the tribe looks out for the tribe type of thing. And I feel like that it started, and maybe I'm just sort of thinking off the top of my head, I'm like, I feel like that really in the very beginning it felt like we were all sort of one tribe. It just wasn't that big. But then there was like the big run up and the PFP explosion, and I feel like that's where it like really started getting very I don't want to say siloed, but like tribal, in terms of like people sort of finding their own factions and communities that they like align themselves with, and it needed to happen because everything was just expanding at such like a rapid rate. But it still feels like that now, and I don't even think it's like necessarily a bad thing. I think people just had to split up. The main NFT community just had to get chopped up into like sub communities. But it's cool to see like the communities out there that are still doing well and alive and kicking in the bear market. And I feel like there's a lot of like, healthy cross-tribal relationships amongst like a lot of these projects. And like you said, man, we like throwing some shade at like the Bored Apes and everything during this episode, but there's a lot of fucking great people who hold them or are, ape, have them as their PFP and everything as well. And again, speaks again to the coolness of like the overall vibe of what's going on out here. And I was actually like really concerned that was going to get lost during the bull market, in case anyone couldn't tell, and that was just going to get sort of like absorbed by like Walmart and McDonald's, and just sort of transform that whole sort of vibe of the space. But it doesn't feel like that anymore, man. I feel like sort of at the bottom of the market here, once the place is emptied out, the people who are left are cool, but for the most part, across all lines.
Yeah, dude. Do we want to do something with this audience that have been like listening and vibing out with us? Real quick, just getting the whip shill in for this week. Thursday, we got, as we mentioned, Rare Skrilla coming through, talking about his recent async drop, and we're gonna pick his brain about ordinals and everything BTC, of course. And we have Fractilians that's going to come and talk about the grant program going on at Mooniverse. So make sure you come to the WIP, 12 p.m. Pacific, Thursday, 3 p.m. Pacific, or 3 p.m. Eastern. But if anyone in the audience has any questions or wants to say some shit based off of what we said, do we want to experiment with that here right now?
Sure. Yeah, we're doing a live thing this week. We have people in our audience in the Token Smart Discord here. Shout out Trislet for helping us set this up. I see Dragonade's mom just popped in along with Dragonade and a bunch of other people.
If anyone wants to say something, has any questions, I guess you can write it in the general chat, or you can raise your hand, bring you to the stage, ask a question in chat.
Just crash the stage or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't know how this works. We've never done this
No
before.
idea.
Or maybe we need to allow people. I don't know. But this is cool, man. We've never actually done this before. Oh, do we have a question in the live chat? Oh, hello, says Dragonade's mom. Hello, Dragonade's mom. We've never actually done this before, but in the spirit of doing things, decided to try doing a live thing this time just to make sure it worked. And if it does work, maybe we do some of these on a recurring basis and try and get some live bodies in here and some audience interaction or something like that. A lot of people know for a long time we were taking guests for we started off taking 0 guests. And then moved to a format where we were interviewing projects and guests and all this stuff for a long time. And now we're just back to me and Matt. But now we're back to me and Matt with an audience. Ooh, question from Dragonade. Thank you. Our first question from the audience. What do you think will be the next wave?
DJ question, Dragonade.
What do you think will be the next wave, Matt?
What's top of mind for me is I always go off of what I'm most interested in and what I find myself going back and checking and thinking about the most. And I had a tweet yesterday, just was talking to artist Josh Pierce and about an upcoming Nifty drop. And we're talking about what we can do. We were talking about the top theme of eternal life. And that kind of prompted me to think about soulbound tokens and or a constantly evolving dynamic Nifty. And on the latter point, he was like, oh shit, did you check out a project that I released with Transient Labs last year called Impermanence? And I was like, no, what the fuck is that? And it's a work of dynamic art, and it changes and updates based on the meteorological conditions of your local area.
Yes, very cool.
Day and night and temperature. And there's 100 plus different states. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't know. I had not seen that. So I go check it out. There's only 3 editions out of 100 total listed. Scoop one. And it's mimicking my weather conditions. It snowed last night. It was snowing, got really cold, changed with the day and night. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. Anytime I see a new weather condition outside, I want to see what my art's doing. I want to see what Josh did for those different states. And that sort of dynamic, evolving art is really fucking cool to me. Matt Cain's Gazers obviously is probably the premier example of that, where every morning and night, that's sort of my ritual to check how and what my gazer is doing. That sort of art, something that is really only possible, one, in the digital realm, but that the programmability of the blockchain and smart contracts really helps to unlock longer term, is just really fucking cool to me. And things that you can do and experiences you can create based off of that sort of dynamic primitive and the basic states is really fucking fundamentally interesting to me. And every artist or every creator will have their own interpretation of how they work with that. So I don't know if that's going to be a big wave that will catch a lot of people, but I'm just probably more selfishly hoping that more people get in on that. And again, for async art's sake, the real kind of originators of programmable art when it comes to crypto art, I hope they have the resurgence when more people understand that this sort of art has been out there, is collectible, and that there are more and more tools for artists to create fucking crazy experiences. What about you, Rizzle?
Dude, cool answer, man. I remember talking in the very beginning when Conlon was sort of hatching the concept for async. We had a conversation with him and hopped on a call and talking about this sort of concept that you're talking about playing out right here with dynamic changes with depending on a whole bunch of outside variables and everything. So it's cool to see. It's always crazy thinking back on some of these conversations on how far ahead we were with some of these concepts at the time and how long they actually take to be come to fruition or whatever. Dude, I'm constantly salty about not having a gazer, so I appreciate that reminder.
Shout out Nifty Pat at Nifty Gateway. He was someone else I thought was early on. I'm yo, you should probably scoop a gazer, dude. He missed it too, and he was eternally salty.
Yes, that's about where I'm at. For me, man, I think AI consumes the world shortly, probably more shortly we think, and I think it's I think it comes with its pros and cons, but in terms of like the next wave, I think there's gonna be like a massive unlock for people like me. Honestly, like I'm out here, you know, being able to be an artist like I have never been able to be just because of the tools that have come out. And I imagine there's like a lot of other people out there like me, like once this stuff becomes like more accessible and even more like user friendly, it's just like so fun and fascinating to see what you can create and like conjure up. And I think like especially once it hits the metaverse in terms of like world building and like asset building in like the 3D realm, I think shit's gonna get like really crazy and really fun. So I don't know. I don't know how far out like the tech is from supporting that level of like you know, influx or whatever. Like you see even with like a lot of these platforms that are like pretty well polished now, still like once you get to a certain, you know, amount of like you know, polygons or people in there or things moving simultaneously, shit doesn't hold up too well. But in so many capacities, man, it's just crazy to see like the constant evolution of like AI across a lot of industries, including our own. But I think I don't know. I think shit's gonna get weird, and that eats it all.
Great. Cool. Yeah, well, this is probably a good place to wrap things up. Big shout out to Trizlet and Token Smart for hosting us in this.
Oh wait, yeah, we got another question, but I gotta hop off in a couple of minutes anyway. But we might as well do our due diligence. Thanks, Mike, for the question. Mike, MIC. Question: is virtual real estate worth it? Do you think it will gain any traction in the future? I'll take this one first, and then I'll pass it your way. I don't know. I would say it depends. I mean, I feel like from a collector's standpoint, or like an artist or creator, like being able to make something that people appreciate enough to buy, I think there's like a lot of contexts where it's cool to own virtual land, and just in the same way it is cool to own like an NFT. Like it does have that feeling of like ownership when it's like actually yours in your wallet. And a lot of these places are, you need to own them in order to customize them, or like, if they're built on the blockchain, you can do interesting things like token gating. But it's also, we've been to a lot of platforms recently where you don't have to own anything in order to participate. Or like Monoverse, for example, you can build and then mint your thing if you want to or not. So there's sort of like an option that doesn't necessarily affect anything from like the builder or user side of thing. So I don't know. I think probably some people would say it's worth it. Probably some people would say it's not. I think everyone sort of approaches it with like different use cases and intentions in mind. Both from a user and collector standpoint. So I don't know, probably not for everyone, but definitely for some people.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective, like one of my most valuable like digital assets that I own is the a lot of money design crypto art stadium that I have at CryptoVoxels.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's sort of like my personal metaverse home. Is it the most valuable thing like to anyone else? Probably not, although like some like passionate collectors, like a lot of money affiliation definitely increases its like overall potential market value. I think before virtual real estate is actually worth it, you need to look at the actual activity that's coming in through either Monoverse spaces or like parcels in CryptoVoxels or DCL or Somnium space. Is it something that people are constantly bringing in events in and around? Is there a lot of foot traffic? Is there a lot of like in-world engagement? Looking at those metrics will probably be like more telling to see if it's actually worth it, or if it's just like a price that's inflated now because it's like because of the scarcity or whatever. I think the pricing for a lot of the land is more weighted by the latter, and people aren't really thinking about the former, the actual activity that's going on in these places. The whip has been set up to try to funnel more activity to these spaces to add value to the virtual worlds, but because there's not many outfits like us, I think in that sense you can probably say that at least for now, virtual real estate probably isn't worth it. But if there is an increase in that in-world activity, and certain spaces would be the beneficiaries of that in terms of becoming more and more valuable, quote unquote, metaverse real estate. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree, man. I have my little apartment in Crypto Voxels that Brookhawk set up for me so kindly and everything. And I've hosted like a bunch of events in there. And, I pop in every now and again to like change something around or whatever. But it does have like, nostalgia vibes at this point. And it's mine and it feels like mine. I have control over it and, good memories of being in there. And, when I hop in, even on my own to switch out the guest list or something, it like, I don't know. It sounds weird, but it does sort of feel like, home or whatever in a way virtually. So, but yeah, man, I feel like you probably don't need to necessarily own it to get that feeling. But, I don't know. I'm an NFT collector, like total nerd about this stuff. So I like it.
Same. Cool. Well, those questions were awesome. Shout out Dragon.
Yeah, appreciate it.
For the questions. Shout out Trizlet, Token Smart for hosting us. We'll be back next week for this recording. It's super smooth. And shout out Hexadized, Soul King, Dragonade's mom, of course, and Mike for jumping in and listening to us in this inaugural Matthew and Rizzle show live recording. It was dope.
All right, dude.
Cool.
Until next week. See you at the whip.
Yeah. Cool. Peace, dude. Later, y'all.